Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to be talking about Battle of BC6. This event is going to be coming in at an A+ tier, but it's like 50 points shy of being a super major event. So if a couple players get some big upsets this week and maybe get a couple more points, it will be pushed over to that super major status. And our top 16 seeds are going to be WebJP, Tilde, Ryuo, and Syrup in 13th, Toraguri, Doramigi, Ron, and Raflo in 9th. In 7th you're going to have Onin and Riddles. 5th is MKLeo, Yoshidora. 4th is Hurt, 3rd is Gluttony, 2nd is Sparko, and projected to win the entire thing is Sonics. And the top 24 is broken into 4 parts of the bracket beforehand, so we're going to be talking about all 4 of those parts of the bracket. The first one is going to have Sonics as our top seed, and I'd be pretty surprised if he got upset at all in this tournament, but especially in this phase. His first opponent is likely going to be Opsign, and Zurisu does not have a lot of fun versus Sonic. It's one of the few characters in the game that can actually catch up to her and make space versus her. Usually she's the one setting the tempo, not the case versus Sonic, so that's not a super great matchup. The Schmixtape, he plays a multitude of characters with the Wolf, the Yoshi, and the Mii Gunner, and Mii Gunner is probably going to be his best choice, and honestly the character doesn't do terrible versus Sonic, but considering the amount of experience Sonic has versus Capitancito, I would be very, very surprised if he ended up losing that one. And then finally, you're going to have Ryuo, and Sonics has grinded a lot in the Diddy Kong matchup after losing to Tweak at LMBM, so he's probably going to be fairly ready for that one, but maybe he's ready for Tweak's style of Diddy Kong, and it ends up screwing him over, but I honestly doubt that's going to happen, and I think Sonics is going to get to the top 24 through the winner's side, but these other top seed in Onin, I'm not so certain for him. I think he's going to get Basketball Tickle and Monty. He looked really good at Collision, but my problem matchup comes when he goes up versus Doramigi. Now, it should be noted that Doramigi doesn't have the best reps versus Steve in the past. He hasn't been doing super great versus Akola, but that's Akola to be fair. I just think Minmin does honestly really well versus Steve. Usually the thing about Minmin that slows her down is that once characters create that pressure for her, they make that space, she has a really difficult time at actually getting that character out. And it is the same thing for Steve. The second he up tilt Minmin shield, she's probably going to lose that stock, but it's really hard for Steve to actually make that space. The character's mobility isn't super great, and Minmin has no problem destroying the blocks. She can easily contest both Anvil and Minecart because she's going to have upsets to that up smash, as well as just all of her moves being extremely disjointed. And the edge guarding is where I think Doramigi is going to take the cake. I'm going to be honest, I don't think people are going to be ready for Doramigi at this event just because of his style of Minmin and how much better he is than every other Minmin player. And I think Onin is going to be kind of the first hurdle to see how well he's going to do, and I think he's going to pass it. Our next top seed is going to be Hurt, and he's honestly got a pretty tricky bracket, in my opinion. His first opponent is going to be Aramate, who's a really good Ike player, and he should win that one. Low-key, Ike does fairly well versus Snake, like, relative to how bad he is as a character, because the advantage state is so strong. You have a really nice disjoint to deal with Grenade, but it's still definitely a matchup where you would favor Snake to take it, and also the Hurt is just a better player, so he should win that one. Then you're going to have Mr. R, and it's another kind of scary matchup. Sheik has the tools to beat Snake, especially if you know how to work around Grenade, and I can guarantee that Mr. R knows how to work around Grenade, considering that he has a Snake of his own. So it's a scary draw, but I just think Hurt's going to be the better player and win. And then finally, you're going to have Syrup. It's probably going to be the Ness coming out from Syrup here, just because I think Ness does way better versus Snake than Steve does. And it's definitely not an amazing matchup. Well, I would actually still say it's in Ness's favor, even though the edge guarding is really bad and you have these massive disjoints from Snake, just because you really don't have access to Grenade. You have to play the character in such a different style than you typically could. But Hurt has demonstrated before that he can do that versus Mia as a really good example, where he just doesn't use Grenade at all. He's okay to box with Snake. He's really comfortable with those tools, and he comes out on top versus Mia. If he's able to execute that same game plan versus Syrup's Ness, I would expect him to win. And if Syrup goes Steve, I would also expect him to win, just because Hurt is really good versus Steve. And the other top seed is going to be MKLeo. He does have Dark Wizzy, which is like technically scary because he does have a little bit of a bad history with Mario's, but I'm going to give Leo the benefit of the doubt and say that he is able to overcome that one. I also think that he's going to be able to get the upset over Hawk, or not the upset, I just think he's going to beat Hawk because it is MKLeo. But then we get Toraguri, and I don't know who's going to win this one. I will say I do think that Joker beats Banjo, not by a significant margin, but Gun is just a really annoying thing for the character to deal with. The disadvantage state is also pretty rough for Banjo, especially when you have Arsene online, and MKLeo is just such a talented player, but it's Toraguri. He's the best Banjo player in the world by far, and I can guarantee you that MKLeo does not have the experience versus Banjo unless Tweak has maybe loosened him up a little bit in that aspect, but I'm going to give MKLeo the benefit of the doubt. He's a top 10 player in the world. He's playing the objectively better character, but Toraguri he's really, really good, so it's kind of tricky. Next up is going to be Spargo as our top seed, and his first opponent is going to be up versus Saltlord, and I believe they play Aegis, but I wouldn't quote me on that one. And whenever it comes down to whoever is the better player in terms of the Sword Ditto, you're just going to favor Spargo every single time, so he should win that one. Then you're going to have either Terrakatori or Danny. Now, I'd be disappointed in Spargo if he ended up losing to Terrakatori when he plays Aegis and Corrin and Cloud and literally any character in the game, because it's Little Mac. Guy is very good at the game. Terrakatori is a crazy player, but it's Little Mac. Like, you should not be losing that if you're in contention for the best player in the world. Danny, I think, has a real shot versus Spargo. Spargo has had some troubles in the past losing to Wolf, and by that I mean, like, he lost to Jackal one time. But when it's looking at Spargo's resume, losing to one character one time is, like, a pretty significant deal. And Danny has low-key been cooking recently, so I think he's got a shot there, but it's still Spargo at the end of the day. And then finally, you're going to have either Web JP or Big D. Low-key, I think Nestboy12 has a really real chance of making a run here, because I think Nest is pretty decent versus both Ice Climbers and Sheik to an extent. I think Ice Climbers is a little bit more tricky, and I do think that Big D is probably going to beat Nestboy12, and I also think Big D is going to make that upset over Web JP. Sheik Ice Climbers is just a really difficult matchup for Sheik, and there are tools that she has in the matchup, and by that I mean camping with Needle, so it's not impossible, but definitely not favored. And then you're going to have Spargo versus Big D, and Spargo is going to win that. Pirate Side B literally just invalidates Ice Climbers as a character, so he's probably just going to do that. Then you're going to have Riddles as our next top seed, and his first opponent is going to be up versus MK Law, and he should be winning that one. I think he's just going to zero death him in every single interaction. Then you have MFA. They've played 3 times before. Riddles has won every single one of them, so he should be winning that one as well. And then finally, you're going to have Ron. Now, I think that Yoshi actually does pretty well versus Kazuya, so this isn't a guarantee, but I'm just going to give Riddles the benefit of the doubt. Even though his results haven't been amazing recently, they've never been bad either. I think his worst result is like a 9th place, or I think Collision maybe he does a little bit worse, but aside from that, he's just been getting 9th place. He's been a really consistent player, he just hasn't been getting into the top 8s, and I think he's going to do well enough at this event where he should be able to beat Ron. And our final chunk of the bracket before that top 24 is going to have Gluttony as our top seed. His first opponent is going to be Sam, and straight up, I don't know who Sam plays, so sorry, Sam, but you're probably going to lose to Gluttony. Then you're going to have either Armadillo or Guy, and he should be favored versus both of these players. I will say, I think Armadillo does okay versus Wario, and by that I mean, it's still a matchup that I would have Lucario losing, but not by a significant factor. Sometimes you're going to get wafted and you don't get any Aura. That sucks, but sometimes Gluttony isn't going to have that waft, and he's going to have to get the stock the old-fashioned way, and if Armadillo is able to evade that downer off stage, he's got a chance to build that aura and take the set, but I don't know if he's going to be able to evade that downer because that move is just really, really good, and considering the amount of reps Gluttony has versus Lugi, who I would say is better than Guy, he should be fine in that matchup as well. And then his qualifying matchup is either going to be against Tilde or Ouch, or very likely versus one of those players, and I low-key have no idea who wins between Tilde and Ouch. It's a very 50-50 matchup for me. I would maybe put a slight favor for Tilde just because he's really good versus the Spaceys, but I also think both Ouch and Tilde can beat Gluttony. Again, not by a significant favor. I would still have Gluttony favored like 55-45, but it's a very tight matchup. Both those players are extremely talented, and they've taken Gluttony to Game 5 before. At least I know Tilde has, maybe Ouch has in a recent memory, but they're both very, very good players. They absolutely can beat Gluttony, but I'm going to give Gluttony the benefit of the doubt. Then you're going to have Yoshidora as our final top seed. His first opponent is going to be up versus Nexus, and he should be able to win that one, as well as versus Quandale, considering that Yoshidora has one of the best records in the entire world versus Cola, and by that I mean he's like double negative, but he's beaten Nicola before, so he should be able to beat Quandale. But I do think that Yoshidora is going to lose to either Chag or Rafflo, but it's probably going to be Rafflo because that guy is a monster. They played once at Terra, and Rafflo did end up taking the set. Palutena just does really well versus Yoshi in general, and considering their only encounter, Rafflo has won. I think the first time you play Yoshidora is the hardest time for you to beat him just because his style of Yoshi is so much more different. It gives me even more confidence that he's going to pull off that upset. And in the block, just thought I should mention that Ouch and Gluttony have actually never played before, and then Tilde and Gluttony have played once. Tilde wins the first set, Gluttony wins the second set, though it does go Game 5, so it doesn't really change anything, but a lot more variance in this Ouch Gluttony set. So we've got our top 8 qualifiers. This is going to be Sonics and Doramigi. I think this is going to be Hurt MK Leo. This is going to be Spargo Riddles, and this is going to be Gluttony Rafflo. And for Sonics, it could be Onin and Doramigi. I just think that he's going to win. Sonic does very well versus Steve. I think Sonic does pretty good versus Midman. The offstage gameplay is just so bad for that character, and Sonic has no problem kind of creating the space. And then Sonic is probably Steve's worst matchup. Now, Onin has taken Sonic to Game 5 in the past, so it's not unthinkable that he could win this one, but Sonic is just such a good player, so he should win that one. Then you're going to have Hurt versus MK Leo, maybe Toraguri, but probably MK Leo. And I honestly have no idea who is going to win this one. I'm going to say that MKLeo ends up taking it just because historically he is very good versus Snake, and I also think Joker does pretty well versus Snake, especially if you know how to abuse the character, and MKLeo absolutely does, but Hurt is on a different level with Snake right now. He's clearly better than every other Snake player in the world, so maybe MKLeo isn't ready for that level of play, but we'll have to see. Then you're going to have Spargo versus Riddles, and I do think that Spargo is going to win this one. They haven't played since Port Party, where Riddles did end up taking the set, but Spargo's probably just going to go Corrin here because Corrin does very well versus Kazuya, way better than Cloud does and slightly better than Aegis does, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Corrin came out and the Corrin ended up winning the set for him. And then finally, you're going to have Gluttony versus Rafflo, and they've played so many times before, and Gluttony comes out on top pretty much every single time, but Rafflo, he's beating Gluttony. It's not impossible, but Gluto's going to be the favorite. And y'all know the drill, we don't do the loser side of the bracket just because there's way too much variance, but I've taken the players that are most likely to top 8, and we've given them the percentages. You have confidence here with Sonic, Leo, Spargo, Pluto. These are the people that I think are going to top 8 to the winner's side. Then you have Hurt, Dora, Migi, Rafflo, and Onin. And these are the people that I think are going to top 8 to the loser side. So this says Rafflo. This is going to be Yoshidora because I think Yoshidora is going to get upset by Rafflo. So then it's going to beat Base Page, beat WebJP, run into Hurt because MKLeo is going to beat Hurt. Then you're going to have Hurt versus Yoshidora. And I do think that Hurt wins that. He's won their last 2 encounters. Even though Yoshi Loki does pretty well versus Snake, I still think that Hurt's going to win it. Then you're going to have Dora Migi. And he is going to get top 8 through this part of the bracket right here because I think he's probably going to be Onin, though it is a big coin flipping matchup, to be honest. I'm just putting my money on Dora Migi, and then he's going to play either Ron or Tilde, and he should be able to win both of those matchups. Again, Yoshi is a little bit scary, but I'm just going to say that Dora Migi is the better player, and versus Tilde, you could just edgeguard Falco the second he goes off stage, so he should be winning that one. Then you're going to have Toroguri fighting off versus Rafflo for this part of the bracket, and I think Rafflo's going to win that because it's Banjo-Kazooie versus Palutena, not a fun matchup for Banjo-Kazooie. And finally, you're going to have Onin top 8 through this part of the bracket. He is heavily favored versus Riddles. In my opinion, Riddles does not do super well versus Steve, and neither does Kazuya or Terry, to be fair, so I'm not going to give him too much slack for it, but Onin would be my favorite to get through there. The next tier is going to be Very Real Chance with Yoshidora, Riddles, and Toroguri. And the best way to describe this tier is if this was in a vacuum, I didn't have the bracket, we were just picking players that I think are most likely to top 8, they would be up there with the players in these 2 tiers. They just can't be because you can only have 4 players in this tier because winner side, only 4 players in this tier, loser side. These are just the people that I think their brackets are a little bit worse. I just think they're straight up going to lose these matchups that are going to occur if they occur like that. So I'm going to say that they're in the Very Real Chance tier instead of this tier. Then you're going to have the also Very Real Chance with Ron, WebJP, Tilde, Ryu, Sierra, Big D, Quick, and Ouch. These guys are all very close to being in, honestly, this tier. Their level of play right now is so high in Smash Ultimate that so many people could get into this top 8, but I think the brackets matter a little bit more for these players, especially for Big D, just because Ice Climbers has so much variance in their matchup charts. But every single one of these players, if they make the right upset, if they get the right bracket, even if they don't get the right bracket, they could absolutely get into the top 8. And the final person that I gotta mention is Goryoka. I believe this is his NA debut, and he's probably going to be playing the Joker, but if he brings out the Mewtwo, people, they're not going to be ready for that matchup chart. And it's one of those situations where you're not ready for the matchup, but my character sucks. So who is actually going to win? And if people suck enough versus Mewtwo and the Joker comes in clutch, I think Goryoka has a chance. So we've arrived at the top 8, and this Google Sheets was made by the lovely ICOOKIEMONSTERZ. Their link will be down below. Be sure to follow them, and while you're doing that, be sure to sub if you're enjoying the content. And we're going to be the top 8 that I think is going to happen. Our first matchup is going to be Sonics versus MKLeo, and this is quite a tricky one. They haven't played since, I believe, Wave Dash, where MKLeo did take it, but he was playing Corrin in that set, and that was months ago at this point. I don't think the Corrin's going to be coming out from MKLeo, even though it's a pretty good choice versus Sonic. It's probably going to be the Joker, and Joker also does pretty good versus Sonic, and by that I mean the matchup is even, but it's Sonic. The bar is very low at this point, and since they haven't played in so long, and prior to this their sets were going back and forth, I'm just going to give it to Sonic because form-wise he's been better than MKLeo recently, but this is a very coin-flipping matchup. It honestly could go either way. Then you're going to have Spargo versus Gluttony, and Spargo does take their last set at Watch the Throne, but prior to that, Gluttony takes a set at Terra, but I also think Spargo took a set at Terra. Basically, they have been going back and forth, but I think Spargo is going to take it for a couple reasons. The first one's going to be he won that last set at Watch the Throne, but Gluttony ends up going down to Shattuck at Genesis in the losers bracket, and Shattuck's Corrin is way better than Spargo's Corrin, obviously, but Spargo very good at Corrin. That is an option that he could use. I also think he could just do it with Cloud and Aegis. I just like it when players have multiple characters at their disposal where they can kind of switch up the tempo, throw the opponent off guard, and because of that, also consider that Spargo won their last set, I think he's going to take this one. In the loser side, our first matchup is going to be Hurt versus Dora Migi, and this is such a weird matchup because they've played twice before, and Hurt has won both of their encounters, and I'm going to favor Hurt to win this one as well because, you know, he won both of their encounters. But Min Min is like, without a doubt, Snake's worst matchup. It is unbearable how bad that matchup is. The second you get hit, you're just losing your stock because of the terrible disadvantage. You really don't have to worry about contesting with grenade at all because Min Min is just poking you from halfway across the stage. The grenade blows up, whatever. I don't really care about that, but you can edgeguard Min Min. There are flaws in the character's game plan that Snake can exploit, and Hurt is very good at doing so. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but very, very tough draw for Hurt, even though he usually wins it. Then you're going to have Raffalo versus Oden, and I think Raffalo is going to win this one. He's really good versus Steve, and I also think Palutena is quite good versus Steve. You have really good moves at destroying the block. You're able to contest with minecart because you have access to back air. Like, you can literally just swing that move, and if you time it right, you are going to win that interaction. And Raffalo's also just been such a phenomenal player. But to be fair to Oden, he's coming into this weekend pretty hot with a 3rd place at Collision, so pretty coin-flipping matchup considering they never played before. But I'm going to give the slight benefit to Raffalo just because I think Paladin is pretty good for Steve. Next up is going to be our losers quarters, with Gluttony Hurt being our first matchup. And one of the biggest problems I have with the European meta is that Snake is just a huge blindside matchup because there's not any Snake players at the super top level of Europe. And because of that, I would favor Hurt to win this set. I just don't think Gluttony is going to have the experience that he needs to be able to beat a player of Hurt's caliber, because you need to know every trick of the trade that Snake has in order to beat this guy. And you also just need to be fundamentally better than Hurt. And while Gluttony is maybe fundamentally better than Hurt because that guy is really good, I just don't think he's going to have enough knowledge in the matchup to be able to overcome that one. Then you're going to have MKLeo versus Raffalo. Raffalo wins their first set, then MKLeo wins their more recent set at King Kong. Both of them end up going game 5, extremely competitive, and I'm going to say that Raffalo ends up winning this one because you know what? He won the first one, then Leo wins it, now it's Raffalo's turn, and that's the logic that I'm using. So we've got our top 4, Sonic Spargo in the winner's side and Hurt Raffalo in the loser's side. And for Sonic Spargo, the dichotomy of the set pretty much comes down to, is Spargo's Corrin ready? And until I see his Corrin being ready, I'm just going to go with Sonics to win the set because Sonics hasn't figured out the Cloud in the Aegis necessarily, because you still have to beat Spargo, and Aegis does do pretty well versus Sonic, but he's very good versus those characters. He's figured out the edge guarding versus those characters as well, which is very important, and he's starting to do that with the Corrin as well. But Spargo, he's still learning things with Corrin. His Corrin is getting significantly better every single tournament that he goes to, and I think that's fairly evident by the play he just demonstrates with the character. But until I actually see him take a set versus Sonics with that Corrin, I just have to give Sonics the benefit of the doubt. Then you're going to have Hurt versus Raffalo, and I do think that Palutena does a lot better versus Snake than Wario does versus Snake, but I'm still going to pick Hurt to win it for the exact same reasons that I picked Hurt to win versus Gluttony. Europe as a whole just does not have that Snake experience that I think you need to take out a player of Hurt's caliber. Our losers finals match is going to be Spargo versus Hurt, and unlike Europe, NA has a lot of Snake players running around. Spargo has a lot of reps versus Alan Dis. He's got reps versus Apollo Kage, MVD. He's played all of the best Snakes that we have to offer, and though they aren't on Hurt's level, I think Spargo is going to win this one. I don't think the Corrin's going to come out. It's probably going to be the Cloud or the Aegis, which are both pretty good choices into Snake. The disadvantage of just being able to use Snake's grenade kind of against him by outspacing it is really difficult for the character to deal with. Now, Hurt obviously can overcome Spargo, but that guy's just really, really good, so I'm going to say that he wins it. And I kind of already explained my reasoning of why I'm going to pick Sonic, so I'm just going to pick Sonic until I see the Spargo Corrin win, and I do know that eventually he's going to get the win. Then I'll start betting on him, but I've got to see to believe it. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the sport. It's been absolutely unreal as of late. If there's anything I left out, got wrong, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. Be sure to sub while you're down there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!